In our headlines on this Wednesday, July 15th, here in South Korea. The Lee Jae-myung administration begins its latest round of ministry policy briefings today, with economic agendas outlining plans to boost growth, strengthen fiscal management, and improve public livelihoods. Meanwhile, South Korea's import prices dropped sharply in June, marking the biggest decline in 3.5 years, on the back of lower global oil prices. And U.S. President Donald Trump drops his plan to impose fees on ships in the Strait of Hormuz, accepting instead new investment pledges from Gulf nations. Economic affairs took center stage on this Wednesday at a policy briefing during which President Lee Jae-myung called for efforts to ensure that investment flows into the capital market and not the property market. Our Yoon Jung-min reports.
The president, having begun his second year in office, spoke at a policy briefing on Wednesday.
이제 앞으로 또 남아있는 기간, 이제 3년 11개월쯤 남았나요? 남아있는 기간이 이제 더 중요하죠.
President Lee Jae-myung stressed the need for measures to ensure that investment can shift away from real estate speculation and flow into the capital market. As part of such efforts, South Korea continues pushing its bid to be placed in the Morgan Stanley Capital International's Developed Markets Index, which would help stabilize fluctuations in the stock market.
근데 이게 MSCI 지수 편입 같은 게 이제 수요가 좀 국제적으로 이제 안정화되는 데 도움이 되잖아요. 이거는 왜 잘 안 되고 있을까요?
The biggest obstacle is the demand to allow free 24-hour trading of the Korean won and the free opening of accounts. Opening the market all at once without preparation could have adverse effects on the foreign exchange market.
Koo added that the finance authorities will come up with a safety net by no later than early next year. Wednesday's policy briefing was joined by a panel of ordinary citizens, for the first time intended to represent opinions from all walks of life.
As for the 24-hour trading system, staff in the dealing room must provide support. But I hear there are objections. How do you respond to that, and what could be a solution?
세계적인 선도 국가로 우리가 발돋움하게 될 텐데 그러면 사실은 우리는 밤낮이 있지만 사실은 지구 반대편에는 한참 일하는 시간이어서 우리는 주간에만 8시간 딱 9 to 5 하겠다. 이게 불가능한 시대가 옵니다. 그러니까 거기에 대응도 해야 되고 거기에 또 설득도 해야 되고 또 충분한 보상이나 뭐 대책도 있어야 되겠죠.
When it comes to the recent volatility triggered by single-stock leveraged exchange-traded funds tied to Samsung Electronics and SK Hynix, the president instructed his officials to swiftly come up with complementary measures. On top of that, the finance authorities announced their plan to expand the National Growth Fund to 200 trillion won, worth over $134 billion to bolster investments in new technologies, including aerospace. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
And Prime Minister Han Sang-seok has called for a stronger emergency response posture in light of the renewed military conflict between the U.S. and Iran. Chairing an emergency economic review meeting on this Wednesday, Han said the government should approach rising oil prices and supply chain disruptions as an ongoing risk. She called for close monitoring of crude oil and naphtha supplies while accelerating efforts to diversify supply chains. The Prime Minister also instructed relevant ministries to prevent energy price shocks from severely affecting people's livelihoods. And import prices posted their sharpest decline in 3.5 years in the month of June as lower oil prices eased cost pressures. But pundits remain cautious. Our Kim Jun-ong tells us why.
Korea's import prices fell in June as global oil prices retreated following the Middle East conflict. Data released Tuesday by the Bank of Korea showed the import price index fell 4.4% for the previous month. The index declined in April, edged up in May, and then fell again in June. The June figure marked the steepest monthly decline in 3.5 years. Lower raw material and energy prices drove the decline in import prices. Prices of mining products and coal and petroleum products both fell by double digits, while chemical product prices declined by more than 3%. Meanwhile, export prices remained unchanged in June from the previous month. The central bank said higher semiconductor prices and a weaker Korean won offset the decline in petroleum product prices. The latest decline in import prices could be an early sign of easing inflationary pressure. However, analysts note that import prices are still higher than they were a year ago. They caution that the impact will take time to reach consumer prices, and the recent weakening of the Korean won could delay further price stabilization.
The exchange rate remains a major variable. With the won still trading at a much weaker level than in the past, pressure from higher import prices is likely to persist for some time.
The outlook for import prices in July remains uncertain, with renewed tensions in the Middle East posing a key risk. Kim Jun-ho, Arirang News.
South Korean stocks rebounded on this Wednesday as investor confidence returned to the market. Our Park Jun-an covers the latest gains.
Following days of heavy losses, the Korean stock market saw sharp rebounds on Wednesday. The benchmark KOSPI surpassed the 7,200 level, soaring from below 7,000 at Tuesday's close, up more than 6.2% from the previous session. By the 3:30 p.m. market close, the index finished at 7,284. The rapid surge was so strong that buy-side sidecars were activated on both the KOSPI and the tech-heavy Kosdaq just minutes into trading, briefly halting program buying to cool the market down. The explosive rally was heavily driven by large-cap tech shares. Two tech titans, Samsung Electronics jumped over 6.2%, while SK Hynix soared over 8.8%. This comes as a huge relief for investors who were recently panicked by concerns over a potential peak in the semiconductor industry and ongoing geopolitical tensions in the Middle East. The rally followed an overnight surge on Wall Street, with the positive momentum carrying over to the Korean market. U.S. inflation data brought a sigh of relief, with the June Consumer Price Index rising 3.5%, coming in lower than market expectations. This significantly dialed back fears of a potential interest rate hike by the Federal Reserve. Also on Wall Street, SK Hynix American Depository Receipts, or ADRs, skyrocketed by more than 27%, providing a direct boost to the local market.
Semiconductor stocks have already gone through a roughly 30% correction, but earnings and fundamentals remain strong. Concerns over an AI bubble are largely focused on generative AI, while the next phase, including agentic AI and physical AI, is only just getting started.
Analysts point out that true market recovery will depend on actual corporate performances to be revealed later this month. With Taiwan's TSMC and U.S. tech giants like Alphabet and Meta set to report earnings, investors will be watching closely to see whether the AI investment boom remains strong enough to sustain this rally. Park Jun-an, Arirang News.
On the international front, U.S. President Donald Trump has abandoned his intentions to impose transit fees on ships in the Strait of Hormuz, accepting instead new investment pledges from Gulf nations. Our Chung Hye-rim explains.
U.S. President Donald Trump has reversed his plan to charge civilian ships passing through the Strait of Hormuz a fee equivalent to 20% of their cargo value just one day after announcing the measure. On Tuesday, Trump said the proposed fee would instead be replaced by new trade and investment agreements with Middle Eastern countries, following what he described as very productive talks with regional leaders. Trump had announced a day earlier that the U.S. military would guarantee safe passage for civilian vessels through Hormuz in return for a 20% payment. The White House argued the charge would compensate Washington for the cost of U.S. forces protecting commercial shipping from Iranian attacks. But the plan drew opposition internationally, particularly from Middle Eastern energy exporters heavily reliant on the strait. Trump named Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Qatar, Bahrain, and Kuwait among the countries prepared to invest more heavily in the United States instead.
I don't think anybody should be able to charge a fee for the strait or for any other strait relationship in terms of other sections of the world. I don't think anybody should be really in that position. But we were doing it as a reimbursement. the Gulf states are going to invest a tremendous amount of money into the United States, and that was very satisfactory to me. I think it's actually much better. I fought for that.
The reversal does not signal an easing of U.S. pressure on Iran. U.S. Central Command resumed a maritime blockade beginning 4 p.m. Eastern Time on Tuesday, targeting vessels linked to Iranian ports and cargo. Meanwhile, it also said U.S. forces struck dozens of Iranian military targets in a 7-hour operation. Iran responded with attacks on U.S. facilities in Bahrain, Kuwait, and Jordan, where officials said incoming targets were intercepted. In a Fox News interview on Tuesday, Trump warned Iran that its power plants and bridges could become targets as early as next week. He said U.S. and Iranian delegations had been in contact that day, but threatened further strikes if Tehran refused to return to negotiations. 정혜림, Arirang News.
With women still vastly outnumbered at the National Assembly, newly elected Deputy Speaker Nam In-soon is hoping to reshape the way the Parliament works, to make it more inclusive, more productive and more focused on people's lives. Our political correspondent Hong-jin sat down with her.
Female Deputy Speaker. It might seem outdated to highlight the Speaker's gender when women in society routinely hold leadership positions. But in Korea's National Assembly, almost 80% of lawmakers are men. The ruling Democratic Party's newly elected Deputy Speaker, Nam In-soon, is only the third woman to ever hold the post. And she's hoping to use it to bring a different style of politics to the National Assembly.
I think I've highlighted my title as a female deputy speaker because there should be at least one woman among the Assembly's 3-member leadership, not simply for the sake of representation, but to ensure voices that are often overlooked are heard.
Nam has years of experience in civil society before entering politics, especially as an activist for society's minority groups.
이제 의원이실 때 뭐 성폭력이라던가 가정폭력 관련돼서 법을 되게 많이 제정하셨고 이번에 이제 당선 인사말에서도 이제 말씀을 주셨던 게 뭐 소통 정치라던가 이제 민생국회 그리고 이제 뭐 청년, 여성, 사회적 약자를 위해서 이제 많이 힘써 주신다고 하셨는데 이번에 국회 부의장이 되고 나서 조금 더 뭐 중점적으로 다루시고자 하는 목표라던가 마음가짐 같은 게 더 있으실까요?
People often see the National Assembly as a place where politicians fight, rather than a place that works for the people. The National Assembly should reflect the faces of all the people. Too often, only the loudest voices are heard.
Beyond the values she upholds, the Deputy Speaker is also pushing for procedural reforms aimed at making Parliament more productive. One of her key proposals is what she calls a livelihood fast track, which speeds up bipartisan bills jointly introduced by the ruling and main opposition lawmakers.
If a bill is jointly introduced by lawmakers from both parties, it already reflects a certain level of consensus. Those bills should be processed more quickly so that legislation that benefits people's livelihoods doesn't get stuck in Parliament.
Looking ahead, she says the Parliament must also confront long-term challenges, including the demographic crisis and energy transition. Deputy Speaker Nam says her goal is not only to break barriers, but to help build a more inclusive and effective National Assembly that better reflects the people it represents. Hong-jin, Arirang News.
In other news now, South Korea's minimum wage for 2027 has been set at 10,700 won per hour. Lee Jae has the latest.
The Minimum Wage Commission on Tuesday set South Korea's legal minimum wage for next year at 10,700 won, or about $7.20 per hour. The new rate marks a 3.7% increase from this year's minimum wage of 10,321. The decision came after lengthy negotiations involving representatives from labor, business, and the public. During Tuesday's meeting, the two sides submitted a total of 13 revised proposals in an effort to reach a compromise. Labor representatives initially demanded a minimum wage of 12,000 won an hour, arguing that workers need greater support to keep up with rising living costs. Business groups, meanwhile, called for the wage to remain unchanged at this year's level, citing concerns over rising labor costs and the burden on small businesses.
The minimum wage is a uniform standard, so the decision should be based on the realities facing small businesses and vulnerable sectors that are already struggling to keep up with the current wage.
In the final round of negotiations, Labor lowered its proposal to 10,731, while business representatives offered 10,701. With the two sides unable to bridge the remaining 31 gap, the Commission put the issue to a vote and ultimately adopted the business side's proposal. Under the law, the Commission was required to finalize next year's minimum wage by mid-July, allowing the Labor Minister to officially announce the new rate by August 5th. The 2026 minimum wage had increased 2.9% from the previous year. 이승재, Arirang News.
And it's becoming one of South Korea's hottest cultural destinations. The National Museum of Korea is welcoming huge crowds of people amid growing curiosity about the country's history and heritage. Our Park Chae-ryung was there.
On a rainy Wednesday, crowds stream into the National Museum of Korea, eager to explore its exhibits. From families and students to overseas tourists, the museum has become one of Seoul's must-visit cultural attractions.
We came here on a school field trip. It was great to experience Korean history firsthand, and I especially enjoyed seeing the wide variety of celadon pieces.
According to the museum, nearly 3.8 million people visited in the first half of this year, marking an increase of nearly 40% from a year earlier. The rise in foreign visitors was particularly notable. Their number jumped 68.8% from nearly 98,000 in the first half of last year to more than 165,000 during the same period this year.
Yeah, we were on our honeymoon and we're looking for a place that has a lot of history about South Korea because we're trying to understand the history of Korea. I was born here, my mom's from here, and so we just want to share that experience together.
The search has been driven by growing global interest in Korean culture, along with a wider range of special exhibitions. The museum's themed exhibits also present Korean culture in engaging and accessible ways, allowing visitors to experience it more closely. Even on a weekday, a lot of people are visiting the museum to explore the Korean history and culture and the gift shop for some museum goods. Museum goods, or muts, are also gaining popularity among visitors. The gift shop was packed with shoppers browsing cute dolls, magnets, and stationery featuring stylish designs inspired by Korean culture. With visitor numbers continuing to rise, daily attendance now averages around 17,000, exceeding the museum's recommended capacity of 15,000. This has prompted growing calls for the museum to expand its facilities and staff to better manage the crowds. Park Chae-ryung, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, over 7 out of 10 people here in South Korea say their participation in arts and culture has expanded. This is according to a survey conducted by the Culture Ministry on 1,000 people between June 24th and July 1st, after the expansion of the Culture Day program in April. Also, according to those surveyed, the program has served to enhance the overall sense of satisfaction regarding the cultural experience. The Culture Day program offers discounted or free admissions to arts and cultural events every Wednesday. And director Hong-jin's highly anticipated sci-fi film Hope has hit the big screen today with a stellar start. According to the Korean Film Council, Hope saw almost 600,000 advance ticket sales, the highest such figure for any film this year. It also accounts for over 68% of all reservations as of early Wednesday. With a production budget exceeding 50 billion Korean won or some $34 million, Hope ranks among the largest Korean film projects ever. Starring Hwang Jung-min and Cho In-sung, the film follows a police chief of a small harbor town who is called to look into reports of a tiger in the neighborhood, only to discover a far worse danger. From the brink of extinction to a global conservation success story, the black-faced spoonbill is making a remarkable comeback. But experts say its future still depends on protecting wetlands across borders, including those here in South Korea. Our Cho Young-eun explains.
The black-faced spoonbill, one of the world's rarest water birds, was once on the brink of extinction. Its global population fell below 400 in the 1990s, leading to its classification as endangered on the IUCN Red List. Today, the population has rebounded to more than 7,000 and the species has been reclassified as vulnerable. Its remarkable recovery is regarded as one of the greatest conservation success stories along the East Asian-Australasian Flyway, where governments, conservation experts, and partner organizations have worked together to protect migratory birds and their habitats.
Well, the black-faced spoonbill has been one of our 7 flagship species. And so I think now we have a model about how to make the saving of a species work.
Experts say protecting migratory birds begins with protecting their habitats, especially coastal wetlands. As rapid urbanization and coastal development continue across the region, experts stress that no single country can protect biodiversity alone.
It's important that these efforts at the region are also not just promoted and sustained across the 11 member states of ASEAN, but across generation, because our efforts will continue beyond several generations.
Korea provides a strong example of such cooperation, with its tidal flats serving as important breeding and feeding grounds for endangered species. Since the Korean tidal flats were inscribed on UNESCO's World Heritage List in 2021, efforts to protect and manage the sites have been strengthened through closer cooperation between local governments and international partners. Experts say such global recognition helps highlight the importance of conserving habitats and maintaining ecological connectivity.
Korea's west coast tidal flats are exceptionally rich in biodiversity, providing abundant food resources for migratory birds. Preventing the loss and degradation of these wetlands is therefore essential to protecting their feeding grounds. Resting areas are also important, but continued coastal development has left birds with fewer places to rest when the tide comes in.
After the momentum built here over the past 2 decades, there are even stronger calls for long-term cooperation, with the future of biodiversity depending on shared global commitments extending beyond national borders. 조영은, Arirang News.
Today marks Chobok, the first of Korea's 3 hottest days of summer. While the east coast of Gangwon-do province and the southern region saw intense heat today, the central regions got a break thanks to the monsoon rain. Tomorrow we'll see another round of rain across southern parts of the Chungcheong-do provinces and the south. In these areas, up to 80 millimeters of rain could fall, so please keep an umbrella handy. Meanwhile, heat alerts have been lifted across most of the central regions. However, heat warnings and heat advisories are in effect across much of the southern regions. With tropical nights continuing there as well, the heat won't let up even after sunset. Tomorrow, Seoul will start the day at 23 degrees Celsius, Daegu 24 and Jeju 26 degrees. Then by the afternoon, Seoul will get up to 32 degrees, while both Daegu and Gyeongju will soar to 34 degrees. Looking ahead, day and night will stay hot for the time being, and by Sunday, the monsoon rain will spread to the rest of the country. Now here's a look at the weather around the world.
Those are the headlines at this hour here in South Korea. As always, thank you for watching.